All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice in the context of Suicide Squad. Now, what I really want to do is I've been looking online at the different reactions and different people talking about different things about, the Rotten Tomato scores and how critics are bashing the film on Rotten Tomatoes, etc., etc., etc. But I personally have not seen Suicide Squad as yet. However, I am very sure that when I see that film tomorrow, that I will enjoy it because I understand the context in which Suicide Squad is to be sort of taken. Just by watching all the different reviews and the different comments about the movie, I've been slightly spoiled about the movie also because some people, I think when I was watching Collider videos, they kind of hinted at the villain. I think in a breakdown in Joe Blow movies, Joe Blow did indicate who the villain was. So I kind of know who the villain was. But it probably is not going to take from my enjoyment of the film because from what I see, this film is a character-based film. It's really everything is poured into the characters, as David Ayer said. But this is what I want to say. Now, somebody on my channel, one of the members of my channel, he said, there's a petition out there to shut down Rotten Tomatoes because, these critics on Rotten Tomatoes have been writing on such negative things and it's been pulling down the score, and people go to look at Rotten Tomatoes, they see 37, 33, 32%, whatever it is right now on Rotten Tomatoes, and people say, oh, I'm not going to watch this movie. Now, let me tell you guys this. And I think everybody knows this by now, and I was one who said, that doesn't make sense to try to petition against Rotten Tomatoes because Rotten Tomatoes, we already know Rotten Tomatoes is an aggregate site, and really what it does is pulls little comments from different articles by different people who have reviewed the film, who have been authenticated on to be part of Rotten Tomatoes, to be able to get their scores and to aggregate their scores and also to aggregate their summary comments about it. Now, what I told that person was it doesn't make sense. I told them that it doesn't make sense to try to shut down Rotten Tomatoes, okay? It doesn't make sense. I mean, and the second thing is, which people don't understand, is that it's not that all critics or some critics, it's not that all of them or some of them aren't making some valuable or valid statements about their critiques of a film. What I would say is there are critics, as another guy, I can't remember his channel, was saying, there are critics who are literally partisan, and they're comparing, say, for instance, this film, Suicide Squad, to a Marvel film like Guardians of the Galaxy, and that's how they're doing their review. That is wrong, okay? When your basis is to judge this film based off of another film, that's not good, okay? And so I think that's where you're supposed to judge a film based on its merits. And then if you want to mention other films after that fact, you can mention other films as examples. But you should not judge a film based off of another film. That is wrong. And for those people who are extremely partisan and they have a bias going into watching Suicide Squad and expecting it to be of a certain kind of format or a certain kind of way of delivery, or they're being very lenient on one format, but on another format they're being very critical of it. These are the things that we have a problem with. Now, I have a solution to that problem, which fans generally use and they utilize. And how you are able to do this, it's a little bit more laborious, but it's the better route to go, is you can leave comments on that critic's page to give feedback on how you feel about their articles. Being very honest, but to do that, you'll also have to read their articles, which means they'll clickbait you and they'll get paid, and then you leave your comments. But this is how you can do it. The other thing is to go to their YouTube channel, and where these people are unfairly assessing a film, you can leave your comments, okay, as fans. That's how you do it. When The Dark Knight Arises came out, many fans who were passionate about Christopher Nolan's series, after especially the very successful Dark Knight second film in the trilogy, They made their presence known. When Star Wars fans felt that The Force Awakens was being unfairly criticized, they came out in their volumes. Just recently there where the Ghostbusters film came out, which to me is, besides it being a box office flop, is also probably the most atrocious film I've seen in a while. Okay, I thought it was pure rubbish. And that's my personal opinion. Again, I am entitled to my opinion. Is it a fair opinion as a critic? If I'm critiquing the film, that's a whole other story. But to me, it was just crap, okay? It was a crappy film. I didn't find anything humorous in any of it. But that's me, okay? Maybe I got turned off at some point in the film and I just never turned back on to it. It happens. As a movie critic, you can't be like that. You have to be able to give a film a fair shot. And you have to look at all the ingredients that made up the film, and then you criticize it like that. And I've seen a lot of reviewers who have done a good job, on YouTube especially, of breaking down the pros and cons of the film and how it was made and so on. So when you're able to separate how a film is made and not only look at the traditional elements, but the introduced elements which are not very traditional, and what makes a film successful because of that, how it appealed to you, you must be able to do that. Now, as a film critic, some film critics, especially with comic book movies, I noticed film critics, not all of them understand that a comic book movie, it really is a different kind of genre to a normal movie. Because unlike a movie that may be written off of a novel and adaptation of a novel, comic book movies generally have extensive literature that back them up. And even they may have animations or other movies that have sort of given an established character. So if you don't understand the different characters, say for instance in Suicide Squad, and understand the embodiment of these characters, is going to be a problem for you when you see them behave a certain way. I take, for instance, where one film critic said that the morals of the characters were very muddled. And I think this film critic didn't understand that these are not heroes. At no point in time, these characters are heroes. In fact, you will see them in successive films as villains. These are all villains. This is a movie about villains. This is not a movie about heroes. So they're not going to embody heroic characteristics. They're not superheroes. They're not people who have repentance of heart. They're not somebody who's going to change from being villains. They're villains. And these are villains, particularly you have to understand, that don't really work together. They don't care about each other's interests. They care about their interests. So you see, that is probably the thing that's this person. And if you're coming from a Marvel perspective, you comparing this to Guardians of the Galaxy. Guardian of the Galaxy dealt with anti-heroes, people who couldn't find themselves, and then they sort of found themselves and became heroes. This is not a film about that. All right? Suicide Squad is not a film about these people finding themselves and becoming heroic and being heroes. This is not about that. Suicide Squad is about villains fighting other villains. Another thing I heard was the main villain was weak. What you really mean to say is the villain that these villains were sent to deal with, you thought wasn't as great a threat to them. But if you think about who the real villain is in this movie, even without seeing it, and just because I've seen Task Force X in animated movies, the animated Attack on Arkham, because of that, I know who the real villain is in this movie. It's the real villain, the architect, the one who is really the one you need to watch is Amanda Waller. Everybody knows from DC literature and culture, Amanda Waller is always in some sort of subversive thing. She's like Lex Luthor. She's like a female Lex Luthor. Okay, she manipulates things for her advantage. Okay, so for those people who don't know, the main villain in this movie is going to be, you guys are going to realize, is Amanda Waller. It's not rocket science for the people who are into the DC culture or have watched DC movies. So again, when people talk about the villain, the major villain is weak, I'm kind of shocked. I mean, if you guys don't know who the main villain in this movie is going to be, I mean, so the fact that you guys were impressed by Miss Davis's portrayal of Amanda Waller should have told you something, but apparently you still didn't get it. So it's okay, it's cool. Again, so a film critic has to at least have some sort of, when you're going to deal with a comic book movie, I don't care if it's Thor, Captain America. I already know the character of Captain America. So when we were looking at Civil War and people were saying Captain America, he was such a dickhead. No, he wasn't. That's Captain America. Okay? Because again, if you read Captain America in the comics, you would know that Steve Rogers in Civil War is being Steve Rogers. And there was nothing, you might have empathized with Iron Man, but the real dickhead in that movie was Iron Man. It wasn't Steve Rogers. Steve Rogers made plenty sense. He was probably the most sensible character in that entire movie. But again, if you don't really, see, with me, I like to do my homework before I go watch a movie. That's why I eat up everything. I listen to everything I can hear about a movie. So when I go into a movie, I'm somewhat informed. Now, everybody's not like that. Okay? Some people are going to go into Suicide Squad, enjoy the flick, because it's going to be very enjoyable. It's a summer flick. It's like Bad Boys 2. It's a summer flick. Okay? Summer flick movies don't have to be that deep and make you reflective and Matrix-like, like the Matrix. It doesn't have to be that. All right? And clearly, David Ayer, he invested in the characters of the movie. This movie's built around the characters of it. That's where he kind of adopted a pattern that Guardians of the Galaxy did. All right? But the characters are not going to, you're going to empathize with them. They're going to be likable, but they're evil. These characters are not good. They're not, they're kind of redeemable. You could see, they could probably change and become good, but they don't become good in this movie. You know what I mean? So you have to be able to understand this is a movie about villains. This is not, it certainly is not a movie about villains turning to become heroes. Or this is not a movie about anti-heroes. You got to understand that. If you don't understand that, and it's always been that way in the comics. And the humor is to offset the evil things these guys really want to do. And it's kind of humorous. It's kind of funny. Situational humor, how they communicate, because anytime you have a group of bad guys together, they're going to try and backbite each other. They're going to try and hurt each other. That's just kind of natural because they look out for themselves. They're villains. They think only about numero uno, me, and that will happen. But for the greater good of themselves and for the benefit of themselves, I expect them to come together. And just because Amanda Waller's got them on a leash, they're just going to have to do this job. Okay. And eventually they melt together. And they have certain relationships with each other. I expect Deadshot to have a relationship with Harley Quinn because it's been so in the animated series. It's been so in the comics, Instead of having, I forgot his name. I can't believe it. The shark dude. We have Killer Croc. And Killer Croc is a legendary villain. Okay. I don't know how Killer Croc will be in this movie. Again, it's going to be comical. I expect that. All the trailers pointed to it being a comical action flick. So we expect that. And again, what I'm trying to tell you guys as fans, I didn't expect anything else from Suicide Squad. I didn't expect it to be this deep movie. I expected this movie to be what it is that they're advertising it as. And even from the very first trailer that I saw of it, while I expect it to be sort of spooky, I expect it to be gritty. I expect it to be, there's going to be death. Somebody is going to die from the squad. I expect maybe more than one person to die in that squad. It's a Suicide Squad. It always happens. In almost every single Suicide Squad depiction, whether it's in animation, whether it's in the comics, somebody dies, okay? They're bad guys. They're bad guys. Somebody's going to die. You're going to be invested in them a little bit, but somebody's going to die, okay? That's not an if or but, okay? Especially with Amanda Waller. She's going to definitely blow up somebody's head. Somebody's head is going to get blown off in this movie. So we already know that. So going into Suicide Squad, not only is it an interesting idea, but if you're interested in something, I just want to give you guys something. If you're interested in something, you're going to spend time looking at it. You're going to spend time investigating it. And the whole point behind comic book movies is so you can start reading the comic books. And I've heard a number of people say, oh man, I started picking up comic books after BVS. And you're going to pick up more comic books as you watch these movies, because these movies are going to compel you to pick up comic books. And that's the whole point behind this thing, right? I'm not going to try and do any spoilers or the spoilers I heard about the movie, but I still am very intrigued to see how this movie is going to come together. What is the story? Because I don't really know the story of the movie. I know the general story. I know it's Amanda Waller pulling together Task Force X from guys in Belle Reve prison, and they're going to send them out on a mission, which is probably they're not going to come back from the mission, some of them. And it's to deal with a certain being, which she said is H something something, which is not destructible. You can't destroy this thing. So I assume that by the end of the movie, some of this squad's not going to be remaining standing. Some of them are going to be dead. They're going to die. And I think some of us are going to be invested in some of the characters and some of the characters that die, and we're going to be sorry that they're dead. But having said that, the Suicide Squad always had interchangeable members, and some characters would die off. So it's not surprising that some of the Suicide Squad is going to be dead at the end of this movie. I don't know who will die, but, I'm not trying to get spoilers, okay? Don't spoil the movie for me, okay? I'm going to see it tomorrow. So, yeah. Suicide Squad is going to be an interesting movie. People are expecting this movie to be like the Earth Shaker or like the Dark Knight. And I'm like, I heard a guy say that, the Joker in this movie, and we were expecting it to be like the Dark Knight. I'm like, no, this movie's not serious. I mean, from all the trailers you've seen with the one-line jokes that have been put out, we know it's not a serious movie. But at the same time, some serious things are going to go on in this movie. It's going to be kind of grounded. It doesn't mean because it's kind of comical that people are not going to die in this movie or people are not going to get hurt badly or you're not going to see some graphic, really, really horrific things. It's kind of like to me, this movie is going to be kind of like a Chucky movie. It's kind of going to be part horror, part funny, part real. You're going to get that kind of blend in the movie. It's going to feel a little off because we're dealing with crazy people, which is why you even have the graphics. And some people are possessed, So you're looking at that kind of melting pot where it's still made palatable through the humor, but it's really a lot of horrific things going on if you really think about it. But if you don't think about it, it's, for you can kind of disassociate. You're still going to get enjoyment out of it. But if you think about it, if you really think about it. Now, some of these critics, they think along a schooled line of thought about how film is made. But if you go into the story and you really want to overthink the story, for some reason you want to overthink the story, then you're going to see the plausible, palatable danger in the story. But you can't see it if you don't understand the kind of people dealing with it. Bad guy versus bad guy. It's kind of like Predator versus Alien. This is a kind of movie like that. Predator versus Alien. It's kind of like bad guy versus bad guy. This is a movie about bad guys. So you're going to have fun with it because it's not going to make complete sense because they are bad guys. Bad guys don't always make complete sense about what they do. So I thought I would share that with you guys. If you're going to go see that movie tomorrow, I'm definitely going to see it tomorrow. Go in knowing that. I mean, by now, I think most people on YouTube have positive things to say about this movie. A lot of them. And quite a tremendous sum of them like the movie. Some of them even loved the movie, which was crazy. And to hear John Schnepp saying he loved Suicide Squad. But it makes sense. John Schnepp likes weird humor and he likes, certain kind of horrific, kind of crazy things. So it makes sense. But the Suicide Squad is not supposed to make complete sense to anyone. If you ever watch the animated series, I say again, Attack on Arkham, go watch it. It doesn't make complete sense, okay, what these guys do and how they treat each other and everything. So, I mean, some people just don't have the context to be able to enjoy the movie. That's why I advise people to get into comic books or to get into animation or to get into something. You know what I mean? Because if you don't understand the boundaries that David Ayer had to work under, because you have this established material and you're dealing with people who are comic book fans who primarily this movie is made for, first and foremost, and then after that it's also made for the average fan so that they can also enjoy it, so they can get introduced to these characters, so they might want to look at comic books. If you don't understand that, then you're not going to be able to give a proper critique of a comic book movie. They're not the same. Comic book movies are not the same as mainstream film. It's not. Okay? You have to understand these things. Right? Alright, you guys. Have a great one.